So which of these two birds are bigger? It's hard to say, but if they are numbers, it will be easy to compare them. We are going to talk about how to compare two numbers using conditions in C. First of all, we give ourselves a mission. We will get two numbers, A and B, to our program. For simplicity, we will assume that they are integers, and we will report if they are odd or even. And then we will say if A is greater than B or less than B. Then we will find the maximum and the minimum between the two numbers. And finally, we will calculate the average of the two numbers, or ค่าเฉลี่ย or the mean of the two numbers A and B. Just a quick reminder, the odd numbers are like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. They are the numbers that are not divisible by 2. And the even numbers are the opposite. They are the numbers that are divisible by 2. For example, like 0, 2, 4, 6, and so on. Okay, let me give you some examples. 70 and 13. 70 is an even number, 13 is an odd number, and 70 is greater than 13. And the maximum is 70, the minimum is 13, and the average is like 70 plus 13.
83 divided by 2. Why am I doing this in my head? 83 divided by 2, that's
41.5. Let's see if that's correct. So when I run the program, it asks me for two integers. I will give 70 and 13. And then it will say 70 is even, 13 is odd, 70 is more than 13, maximum is 70, minimum is 13. And the average is 41.5. That's right, that's easy. So let's write a program that does that. But before we do that, let's give you some background about how to find out if a number is divisible by 2 or not. It's called modulo. So if I ask what is 20 divided by 3, don't give me any floating point in the answer. Give me an integer. 6. The answer is 6, but 6 times 3 is 18. So there is a remainder of 2, right? So the answer is 6 with a remainder of 2. 2 is called the modulo of 20 by 3. In C, when we write 20/3, we get 6 as an integer. But if we write like this, 20% 3, it will mean 20 divided by 3. What's the remainder? And the answer is 2. So notice the percent sign. The percent sign here means modulo or mod or remainder or in Thai เศษจากการหาร In our case, if something modulo 2 equals 0, that means it's an even number. If something modulo 2 equals 1, that means it's an odd number because it's not divisible by 2. So with that, let's go back and test our program on two more inputs like this. 10 and 80. 10 and 80. 10 is even, 80 is even, 10 is less than 80, maximum is 80, minimum is 10, the average is 45, right?
90 divided by 2, 45. Okay.
Let's try it one more time. What if we get like 7 and 7? Both of them are equal. 7 is odd, 7 is odd. Okay, they are equal. Oh, that's right. In the problem statement, it says we should report whether the first number is greater than or less than the second number. But what if they are equal? Then they should report that both numbers are equal. So we should modify the problem statement a little bit. So I'll add that clause that say if they are equal, then type out that they are equal. Now we feel good. Let me first show you the basic structures of the if statement. On the left hand side is the form that If something happens, if a condition is satisfied, then do something. Otherwise, don't do anything and just follow on to the next step. And the second form on the right hand side is that if that condition is true, then do the first thing. Otherwise, it will do the second thing that calls the if-else statement. I want you to press print screen or whatever you use to do the screen capture and save this image for later reference when we write a program together. There are other forms of an if statement and we'll get to them later, but this is the most basic form. Okay, let's go. Before we write our code, let's do some planning a little bit. What variables do we need and what do we actually have to do in any calculation? First of all, we will need two integer variables, a and b. And this will be our a and this will be our b, right? And the first step, it will say 10 is even. So that's an a right here. That's a. That's b. 10 is less than 80. And that's also a. And this one is also b. So these two variables are used like directly here. And whether it's even or odd would depend on whether if a modulo 2, if a modulo 2 equals 0, then it's even, right? Otherwise, it will be odd. And these two maximums here are either A or B. We don't know which one yet. It depends on which one is greater. And the average, we should have a variable called average. And since average is a long word, it's difficult to type, let me call it mean. You can call it X bar or AVG, whatever. And mean is the only thing that's a floating point here. Should we make it a float or a double? Let's make it a double. And A and B are both int. So that's our plan. Okay, let's go. We'll have two integer A and B. And then we will have a double. That's the average. We call it mean. Oh, one more thing. Let me put up that picture. We should have a variable that keeps the maximum and the minimum. And I will call this my max and my min. Okay, so two more integer variables, my max and my min. First, let's take an input of the two numbers. We will use scanf. %d means integer and integer. And we will get it into A and B. Don't forget, we have to give it the address of A, which is ampersand A, and the address of B, which is ampersand B. And then I will say A is something. Notice that I haven't put the \n or the new line yet because there will be a word even or odd after this. Okay, so when should we put odd? Okay, so when A is not divisible by 2, that means when A modulo 2 equals 1, then that's odd. If A modulo 2 equals 1, printf odd new line. Otherwise, that's called else. Notice that when I write the open parenthesis or open bracket, I will close it right away so that we don't forget it. If A is not divisible by 2, then it must be divisible by 2. Then it must be even. Let's test it. Give me two integers. 70, 100. Let's 101. 70 is even. That's good. That's a good first step. Let's give it 5 and 233. 5 is odd, so that's correct. Okay, now let's do the same thing with B. And I'm lazy, so I'm gonna copy and paste. At this point, you might see that it's not efficient to write a repeating code like this and then change variables. We should do it into a more systematic way, like using functions. We will get to functions in a later lecture, but for now, let's assume that we don't know about functions. Okay, so I will write b is even or odd. That depends on the value of b divided by 2 and taking the modulo. Okay, let's test it. Give me two numbers, 70 and 13. 70 is even, 13 is odd. That's good. So next, we want to write if a is greater than b or less than b. So we will do a condition here. If a is greater than b, then we do something. Otherwise, we do other thing. If a is greater than b, that's easy. So just print f a is greater than b. Not percent %b, percent %d, of course, and a and b here. That means a is greater than b. Otherwise, I will print a is less than b. No, that's not correct because they might be equal. So, else we need to check if a is less than b or not before we write that a is less than b. So how should we put the condition here? We will put it after the else. That's another pattern of if then else. Else if a is less than b, then we do something. Otherwise, we do other thing. Here's the beauty of it. If else can be stitched together 2 times, 3 times, 10 times to create a more complex logic. Now we print f a is less than b. Otherwise, of course, they must be equal. So we don't need to check the logic here. We just write they are equal. Let's test it. 70 and 13. 70 is greater than 13. Let's do it again. 13 and 70. 13 is less than 70. Try again. Let's give 20 and 20. They are equal. So that's very easy. So that's correct. Next, we want to calculate my max and my min. And then we will print it out. What is my max and what is my min? My max is simply, if a is greater than b, then my max is a. Otherwise, my max is b. And the my min is just the opposite, right? We can piggyback, that means reuse, on the condition that we use here, but for simplicity of understanding, we will write it again after this. If a is greater than b, then do something. Otherwise, we do other thing. If a is greater than b, then my max should be a and my min should be b, right? Otherwise there are two scenarios here. A must be less than b or a equals b. Both cases, we do the same thing, right? It doesn't matter if they are equal, then max and min are equal, and that's okay. So we will say if a is less than or equal to b, right? So my max is b and my min is a. And then we print it out. Max equals my max. Min equals my min. What did I forget? I forgot the new line. Let's test it. Give me two numbers. 50, 101. 50 is less than 101. Max is 101. Min is 50. Let's try again. 45 and 53. So max is 53. Min is 45. That's correct. Finally, we want the average, right? That mean. So how to calculate the means? We add two numbers together and then we divide it by 2. So can I do it like this? Mean equals a plus b divided by 2. No, of course, we need to force the compiler to add A and B first. And the way to force it is to use the parentheses here. And then after that, it divide the result by 2. Happy? No, because A and B are both integers. And if we divide integer by 2, which is also an integer, we get an integer. But mean has to be a double, a floating point. So we need to cast the number 2 to a double. And there are 2 ways to do that. The first way is to use the casting double like this. And the second way, which I like, just point 0 here. That's it. And let's print it out. Average equals. Let's use 2 decimal places. Percent 1.2f and mean. Let's do something simple like 50 and 100, and the average should be 75. 50, 100. The average is 75. That's correct. So that's it for our program. Let me show you the whole program here again. So that's how we write conditions in C. And when we get to this, let me show you a little bit more about what are other forms of if statement, right? So let me show you the PowerPoint here. That's the basic structure. And you have already seen that inside the if statement, there's a block denoted by the curly braces. Inside the same block, there can be multiple statements. This is just like this one. When we calculate the my max and my min inside the same block, there can be more than one statements. An if statement has a short form. For example, on the left hand side here is the long form, it's the standard form. And we can shorten it to the upper right hand side here, that we can get rid of the brackets because there is only one statement in each block. And if we get rid of the brackets, we can also get rid of the new lines, right? So we can write it more concisely, like the bottom right hand side here, where we say that if the condition is met, then do the statement 1, just one single statement. Otherwise, do statement 2, just one single statement. Notice that this one has a limitation, of course. If you use the shortened form, you can only use one single statement in each block. And if you want to do something more than one statement, then we need to use the curly brackets. So these 3 options, they all mean the same thing. Next, you have seen that multiple conditions can be stitched together to create a more complex logic. Like this one. Let me show you that we just wrote that one as well. And it is this one that we write, if something happens, then do something. Otherwise, else if something happens, then do other thing. Otherwise again, do yet another thing. So that's another form of if-else statement. And what are the conditions? Condition is this. No, that's a conditioner. We use it with the shampoo and your hair will be very good, will feel very good afterward. Conditions are like A equals B. A is less than B or greater than B, or something plus something equals 100. Notice that when we use the equal sign, we use the double equal sign here. Otherwise, it will be an assignment statement. It will not be a condition. Your program will compile. It will run. And you will feel the pain because you will get the wrong answer. Remember, we need to use double equal sign for the condition. That's very important. In this video clip, we have learned a lot of things about the if statement. We have learned the basic form, the long form, and the short form. We have learned about multiple conditions, how they can be stitched together using if-else and if-else and if-else. We haven't learned about the nested condition yet. We'll do that later. We learned about multiple statements can live inside the same block of the if statement. We learned about condition. Condition is anything with a truth value. In fact, anything with a numeric value, because truth value in C is also numerical. False is defined as 0, and true is defined as anything other than 0. To compare two numbers, we use the equal sign, double equal sign. And we learned about modulo. Modulo is just like the remainder after dividing something with something. 8 modulo 3 or 8% 3 is the remainder after we divide 8 by 3, and in this case is 2. That's it for the conditions in C and the basic if-else commands. See you again next clip.